Hello everyone, welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. My name is Stefan. Thank you for coming to my channel. I'm at ground level. All the way up there, there's 4 stories on this Chicago skyscraper, but on the first floor is this 5.5 gallon Petco Special. One of the smallest aquariums in my fish room, and definitely the cheapest, and definitely the most low tech. But that doesn't mean it isn't just totally lush and awesome. So it's been a minute since we covered this tank, and I wanted to talk about it with you here right now. As I said, 5 gallons, chock full of plants, many of them, most of them epiphytes, but hardly not all. There's floating plants. There is some Taiwan lily. Those are actual plantlets that I clipped from the mother plant. That's this plant up at the top there. And I'll get in closer and show you kind of what that's all about. It's an interesting way to propagate that particular plant, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the 2 that are in here, but I set them in here so they wouldn't perish. And then I've got a bunch of Anubias that's now growing out of the dragonstone there, and then some more that's just in between at the bottom, and then of course a sponge filter in the back. This is the only aquarium in my fish room that is being run on a sponge filter, which means the great news with those things, as most of you know, is you really don't have to deal with it forever and a day. It just kind of keeps on going, and as long as the flow is good and the bubbles are good, barring a real corrupt looking sponge, you can pretty much just leave it, and the biological and mechanical sort of work together. This aquarium never had a true substrate, but at this point it has so much gunk at the bottom. You can see just a crap ton of Malaysian trumpet snails, and they like to burrow in the substrate. Now, there is no true substrate, but that's not stopping them from totally reproducing. And I sort of don't care, because in this really organic looking aquarium, it doesn't bother me. You really have to kind of stare at it for a minute before you even notice them. They just look like millions of kind of gray rubble and riprap. I mean, if I could walk that comment back. Obviously, I would prefer not to have all these Malaysian trumpet snails. Now that I've mentioned it, you probably can't unsee them, but it is what it is. A lot of you have this quote-unquote problem as well. It's why I don't particularly like that snail. It's my least favorite of all the snails, and that includes bladder snails and ram's horn, and my least favorite are these. They remind me of pigeons, in not a good way. But the algae is fairly modest, if not minimal, in this aquarium. So that, and a few mystery snails and other invertebrates and autocinclus, and then this lovely little juvenile super red. Perhaps it's a lemon blue eye. I think I bought it as a super red, but either way, it's a young fish. And there's a couple older ones, long fin plecostomus in here. And then there are 2 female guppies, one gold, or excuse me, there's the long fin plecostomus. You can see he's really big, too big for this tank, young male. But I'd have to break the aquarium down to really catch him out. And then I have a gold endler female and a black fire endler female, and you can see the 2 of them cavorting together there. I caught every single other adult endler out of this tank, but I cannot catch those 2. These 2 girls, Thelma and Louise, that's what I'm going to call them. They're indomitable, and I can't get them out unless I pull out plants and rocks and just literally get after it. Now, eventually I will fool one of these girls at one point and catch her out, because I don't want endlers in this tank anymore. I want to try something new and different. I'd love to hear your opinion. I'm thinking pygmy sunfish, a group, and I'm seeing those online, and I've got a friend who's raising some up, and I would like to acquire those for this tank. That's an idea. Or I might just go down the tried and true and get some kind of awesome beta. Those are two ideas. You could see the not only the pleco, but there's an autosynclus, there's some pygmy corridora in there. I think we're looking at one of each, pygmy corridora and an autosynclus. There's another pygmy to the left. And they're all fat and happy. Everybody's fat and happy and doing well. I'd love to get those two endlers out, and you know, good luck with that. So, as I was saying, the Taiwan lily is an interesting nymphia plant. Yeah, I think it can start with a bulb, but in the end, or as you get more growth, it starts to create children plants, and they look like this, and they're attached to a runner. So this was all an additional plant that grew out of the mother plant I had in another tank, and it's got its own roots that will dangle down, and then the runner, which you can see part of it, and I just snipped it and I put it in here, and I'm gonna kind of get it right side up there you go. So it's sort of operating a little bit like a floating plant. I don't know that it could stay like that forever and a day. And here's another one, same thing. And then a little bit of Brazilian pennywort, and not so many other floating plants. A modest amount of duckweed. Don't know why it's not just going bonkers in here. To be honest, I have no clue, because unless those two female endlers are really going to town, or these Malaysian trumpet snails are really somehow eating duckweed and not doing that for anyone else in the entire world. I don't get it, but I'm very happy. So while I have a crap ton of Malaysian trumpet snails, I don't have any duckweed. I can't see one little, and there's no accounting for that, because this would be perfect for them. Low flow. I don't have my hands in this tank. I'm not really tending to it anywhere near like I do my other aquariums. So you'd think it would be a duckweed orgy in here, but it's not. I really like the general flow. I mean, let's get these roots. Let's try to do a little bit of on-the-fly aquascaping, right? Try to, you know, they're dangling down. They're looking for a footing, the roots from that plant. And then, oh yeah, lest I forget, the incredible, wonderful framing of pothos. Some of this is growing from out inside this tank in the back, and some of it's actually in like a little pot here. If you do it right, or right, there's no wrong, but if you do it in such a fashion, you can't even tell where the internal and external plants begin. It just forms a really beautiful sort of frame for your aquarium, and you can see that here, hopefully in this wider shot of the wonderful framing of pothos, and then how it marries up to the internal plants, the submersed plants, the anubias, and then the different kinds of anubias. I'm thinking that might be the only other submersed plant in here at this point. A couple varieties of anubias. A pile of dragonstone. I mean, I spent maybe a few minutes a long time ago putting it together in the back corner there. I knew I was going to go for the inverted, kind of the triangle, or as I call it, the inverted hockey stick, or sort of tipped over L. And that's a very classic model for aquascaping, and there's many different ways to utilize that scheme, and Mother Nature eventually does what she will with that scheme, and so you get a jungle or a nature aquarium like this one here, but you can still see the general idea of what I was going for back in the day there. The plants are doing really, really well. I've got, not like I said, it's totally low tech. I have got a entry-level Higer light jerry rigged, sort of hanging from below the racking system there with a couple of those wired hooks. And then I've got an even cheaper strip LED, a generic that I got at the $5 table at a swap. And I've got that just literally sitting on the glass, and they both come on more or less at the same time, but not exactly. And they provide plenty of light for what is growing in here, as you can see, obviously. Now these plants don't need a lot of light, but I did. I wanted light so I could see into this aquarium. You know, you strike a balance between your own ability to view your fish tanks versus the sort of low light or brackish or black water vibe that some of our aquariums are going for. And then you got to strike a balance. So I've got these two little cheap lights on a very inexpensive 5-gallon aquarium. Generic sponge filter that's been going off of one of my air pumps, probably that one there, which is hanging. So, I mean, once you pull out and stare at this setup, there's a lot of what I would call jury or jerry rig going on, and you know that's part and parcel to most of our fish rooms. We do what we can with the equipment we have. Not all of us are fortunate to have galleries, you know, of living art like you see on some of the 500,000 subscriber fish channels. I'm very delighted with my fish room, and I'm not trying to, you know, humble brag or anything like that. I'm just thinking out loud and talking. This aquarium is by no means the type you would find in a gallery, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's just part of the nature jungle fun that I have with this hobby and in this fish room. If I could catch those two guppies out, and even if I can't, I'm looking forward to either putting those pygmy sunfish in here, a betta fish, something else. You know, it would have to be small, but because of the amount of plants and rocks and hiding, I do have a few options. I'm ruling out the endler guppy option because I just kind of burned out on having too many small, fast fish in this tank, and I want to be able to observe and study a fish or a trio like I can with this Plecostomus. There's the two girls, Thelma and Louise. You'd think it'd be easy, just throw some food on the top and dip the net in and catch them. I got like 100 others out real quick that way. But those two, and it's funny how it's one from each species that I had, basically the black fire endlers and then the gold black bar endlers. And I have these two healthy, beautiful females, and they do not want to leave. They are holding up this fort. But will they hold me up from doing what I want to do? I don't think so. I'm being patient because, you know, the plant life and all those other creatures, the cleanup crew and stuff like that, it gives them a chance, you know, and some shrimp to regain their population. This tank used to be teeming with Neocaridina. I think the endlers just decimated them. I don't see any with my, I can't spy any with my eye right now. And there's a little baby Plecostomus that I threw in from, there he is, you see him right there? That's just a common. I love when they're juveniles, even these common, they have a really, really white highlight on their caudal fin. I think that's really cool. There's a couple of them, you see them there. fiddling about. So I've got all those sorts of fish in here that are often anonymous, and certainly were never easy to spot or look at or observe when there was 100+ endlers just ripping about the tank of all different shapes, sizes, and ages. I had lost the purity of the strain between the gold black bar and the black fire. First it happens by accident. A fish jumps in and starts corrupting the females from the other species, and then I just gave up and just sort of collected all my endlers and put them in here, and then I brought them all to the local fish shop except for these two, Thelma and Louise. I kind of love that. Now that I've given them an appropriate name, I sort of like them more. That mystery snail is one of Jody P's, by the way. Those of you who know. Beautiful purple. Although under these crummy lights, or I should say entry-level lights, you're really not capturing the purple, let alone the red from that pleco, but be that as it may, a lovely, fun, simple, low-tech tank. If you have any questions about it, hit me up. I promise I will answer. As always, folks, keep your hands in the tank, albeit carefully, and ciao for now.